Couples often spend months mastering structured communication frameworks, only to watch those tools disintegrate during a high-stakes argument. These failures occur even when both partners are motivated and trying to apply their training. Cognitive tools like active listening require a regulated prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for complex logic, which is the first region to shut down as conflict escalates. The total breakdown of a conversation during conflict is a biological event. Treating a biological alarm system as a communication problem ensures most clinical interventions remain ineffective. At the University of Washington Love Lab, John Gottman shifted the focus from self-reported feelings to direct observation. Scientists watched couples from behind one-way glass, recording every interaction through a bank of monitors. Participants wore Holter monitors to track their physiology. A Holter monitor is a medical device that records heart activity. Researchers measured heart rate, blood velocity, sweat output, and endocrine function throughout the discussion. The research spanned several decades and tracked over 700 couples from diverse backgrounds. This data allowed Gottman to predict which couples would eventually divorce with 91% accuracy. The predictions relied on the measurable physiological patterns occurring beneath the argument rather than the content of the words spoken. The findings suggest that autonomic nervous system safety, rather than communication skill, is the primary indicator of relational stability. This graph plots heart rate during conflict. Crossing the 100-beat threshold triggers physiological flooding. Emotional arousal now exceeds the nervous system's regulatory capacity. The prefrontal cortex uncouples, and the person loses the ability to track nuance, hold perspectives, or access creative problem-solving. Sincere attempts to repair the argument cannot land. The partner's nervous system is not receiving them. The flooded partner is currently lacking the biological hardware required to engage in a productive conversation. The conversation has completely ended inside the biological body, regardless of what is still being said out loud right now. Gottman's 4 Horsemen, criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling, are behavioral expressions of underlying nervous system states. Criticism triggers threat detection. While the partner feels attacked, the relationship's foundational safety framework remains intact. This matrix shows why contempt is different. Eye-rolling and mockery are processed by the brain as a social death signal, indicating primal threat and expulsion from the relational tribe. The body instantly reacts to contempt with extreme physical mobilization because it perceives a direct threat to identity and belonging. Physiological data confirms that sustained contempt triggers massive cortisol release and measurable immune suppression in the receiving partner. Contempt is an attachment rupture that creates biological impact, requiring more than communication coaching to resolve. The 4th pattern, stonewalling, is the act of withdrawing from an interaction. Gottman found that 85% of stonewallers are male. This discrepancy is tied to biology. Men tend to flood faster and remain in a state of physiological arousal longer than women. Stonewalling is actually a clear dorsal vagal withdrawal. The nervous system attempts to physically self-regulate by shutting out overwhelming stimuli. This creates the seeker-bunker dynamic. When the bunker withdraws to manage flooding, the seeker misinterprets the silence. The seeker's nervous system reads this withdrawal as abandonment, causing them to escalate further and accelerating the cycle. Asking flooded people to stop stonewalling is as ineffective as asking drowning people to swim gracefully. Preventing this escalation requires a 5-to-1 interaction ratio, which serves as a quantifiable measure of the relationship's autonomic safety account. Every positive interaction, a shared laugh or moment of attunement, deposits physiological safety into this account. A high safety balance allows the nervous system to absorb conflict, interpreting a partner's irritability as a situational mistake rather than a character flaw. This animation shows what happens when the ratio drops toward 1-to-1. The balance empties, and the brain enters negative sentiment override, where a perceptual filter recodes neutral inputs into hostile threats. In this state, a partner asking a mundane question is biologically processed as an attack. Negative sentiment override is a defensive nervous system state that fundamentally reorganizes partner perception. The accumulation of flooding, contempt, and negative override leads to the lock, a stage where the dysregulation spiral becomes self-sustaining. The lock occurs the moment both partners have simultaneously crossed the flooding threshold. At this point, de-escalation from within the argument is biologically impossible. Attempting to apply communication scripts during the lock often causes more damage, as the body is already in a state of high-intensity defense. The only viable path forward is to pause the conversation and focus entirely on the body's physiological state. The protocol for overriding the lock is the sanctuary sequence, a 3-step process of recognizing, regulating, and relating. Step 1 is to recognize activation early, noticing the heart rate climbing before it hits the flooding threshold. Step 2 is to regulate. The nervous system must be soothed back into a ventral vagal state, the physiological condition necessary for social connection, before the discussion can continue. Step 3 is to relate. Only once the body is regulated can the prefrontal cortex re-engage, allowing repair attempts to land. This sequence is why some couples can have loud, intense arguments without damaging their bond. Their underlying safety reservoir metabolizes the conflict. The biological mandate for conflict is to regulate first and talk second. When communication fails, it is often a signal that the body's alarm system is firing. Shifting the focus from the words spoken to the nervous system is the first step in restoring relational safety.